Welcome and welcome back. We are here to embark on our very first Let's Read series here on this channel, my personal channel. It will be for Leonardo da Vinci by Walter Isaacson. For anyone who is here but does not know me from my other channel is Strip Cover Lit, where I talk exclusively about literature, about novels, short stories, poetry, things like that. But here, this is going to be where I do any nonfiction, biographies, philosophy, things like that. And the subject of our very first read along is, like I said, on Leonardo da Vinci. It is the biography from Walter Isaacson. And we're going to be going, I am not sure exactly how many parts this is going to be. There are 33 chapters, so I'm assuming I'm probably going to take it chapter by chapter, but there might be some chapters that warrant breaking up. But for now, we will say the first of a 33-part series, 33 parts, which is ironic for someone who may or may not have at one time perpetrated forging a self-portrait as a portrait of Christ. So we're going to start here with the introduction. I don't know if that was included. Nope, 34-part series here on the channel. But I want to start with the opening paragraph here. The opening paragraph reads as such. Around the time that he reached the unnerving milestone of turning 30, Leonardo da Vinci wrote a letter to the ruler of Milan, listing the reasons he should be given a job. He had been moderately successful as a painter in Florence, but he had trouble finishing his commissions and was searching for new horizons. In the first 10 paragraphs, he touted his engineering skills, including the ability to design bridges, waterways, cannons, armored vehicles, and public buildings. Only in the 11th paragraph, at the end, did he add that he was also an artist. Likewise, in painting, I can do everything possible, he wrote. The first thing that stands out to me about that paragraph and the way that paragraph ends is that, yes, we're going to become very well acquainted with the Leonardo who is both an egomaniac and wantonly expulsive in personality. This was a man who, Leonardo, described in this introduction at times as having been described during his time as sweet, was most certainly also a troll. And I am assuming we're going to get into, what is this? This has got to be a 400-page biography, 500-page biography. I'm assuming we're going to get into some of his clashes with other artists. But it's fantastic when you really delve into the egomaniacs that some of these artists at this time were, because they were the deal. They were the athletes of their day. They were the Elon Musks of their day. They were superstars when they got to a certain level. And we get this little bit in here that he was moderately successful as a painter in Florence, but he had trouble finishing his commissions. Oh yeah, he was sued time after time because he would agree to do a work for someone and just sort of lose interest. Figure, he wasn't interested in it. Figure that's not worth finishing. Figure, I got the main idea down. That's the whole part I was interested in. It's going to be interesting as we learn him. So I also have read Einstein by Walter Isaacson. Wonderful biography. If you enjoy biographies, you should read it. You don't have to know the science involved. Isaacson does a very good job of explaining enough of the science involved that you get the main gist, which is what you really need to go forward in the biography. But yeah, sued time and again because he wouldn't finish things. So I am wondering, as we go through this, if it will be a revelation that was Leonardo just an egomaniac? Or are some of the troubles of his childhood, which we'll learn about, I'm sure, are some of the troubles of his childhood overshadowing the conscious part of his being, so that he is forced to sort of trump up what it is that what he is capable? And is he really just insecure? A lot of times, it's the whole thing that we get into in pop culture. Oh, the big bully really just doesn't feel good about himself. I don't know if that's the case with Leonardo. Maybe. I'm going to be interested to see as we get into the meat of this biography. I think that it's also helpful sometimes to have a bit of a pop culture avatar to sort of glue to the person that you're reading about. And the person that I sort of always picture when I'm thinking about Leonardo and his personality, how it would be to be around Leonardo, is Robert Downey Jr.'s Iron Man, Tony Stark character. That's really sort of who's at play there, I think. So just sort of keep that in the back of your mind. On the next page, the very first paragraph reads as such: his scientific explorations informed his art. He peeled flesh off the faces of cadavers, delineated the muscles that moved the lips, and then he painted the world's most memorable smile. He studied human skulls, made layered drawings of the bones and teeth, and conveyed the skeletal agony of St. Jerome in the wilderness. He explored the mathematical optics, showed how light rays strike the cornea, and produced magical illusions of changing visual perspectives in The Last Supper. I'm assuming that you are familiar with the Mona Lisa. I am assuming that you are familiar with The Last Supper, but perhaps less familiar than those two, though no less stunning. Possibly my favorite work from Leonardo, St. Jerome in the Wilderness, which was left unfinished. I'm going to pull up my big book of Leonardo. You should Google this, because this is going to be a terrible way to see this work. But do you see that? Do you see how stunning that is? Left, unfortunately, unfinished by Leonardo. Just stunning. I will be pulling out my big old book of Leonardo from time to time. If you don't have one, you should. It's I've never seen any of Leonardo's stuff in person, but even just seeing replicated pictures at a better scale than what you normally see, it blows your mind. Just blows your mind that someone was capable of doing things like that. Making things. So the way I've always thought of Leonardo's paintings are hauntingly realistic. They're not the most realistic. Certainly they're not impressionistic or anything like that, but they are of a haunting realism. But I think this sfumato, is that how you say it? Sfumato. The sort of blurring technique that he used when you were not supposed to focus on something, which has the effect on the painting that your line of sight and vision and clarity give you when looking at the real world, so that the rest of everything else sort of melts away. Brilliance. The very next paragraph on this page 2 reads as such: by connecting his studies of light and optics to his art, he mastered the use of shading and perspective to model objects on a two-dimensional surface so they look three-dimensional. This ability to, quote, make a flat surface display a body as if modeled and separated from this plane, end quote, Leonardo said was, quote, the first intention of the painter, end quote. Largely due to his work, Dimensionality became the supreme innovation of Renaissance art. I am hoping I will be interested in the substantiation of that final claim, that it was Leonardo's work that really made Dimensionality a supreme innovation of Renaissance art. I was under the impression that this was Donatello sort of showed some of the first signs of this sort of thing, and that Leonardo was not particularly gifted in perspective for his time period. That's what I was under the impression of. I was under the impression that there were much bigger names in the perspective revolution than Leonardo. But if this is a claim that I am wrong about, I am more than happy to admit as much, so long as it is cited in the biography here. And I'll be incredibly interested if and when it is. The final paragraph on this page and leaking into the top paragraph of the page 3, that kissing page there, is what I think is an incredibly important quote for this biography. I embarked on this book because Leonardo da Vinci is the ultimate example of the main theme of my previous biographies, how the ability to make connections across disciplines, arts and sciences, humanities and technology, is a key to innovation, imagination, and genius. This is a big quote for several reasons when you're looking at this on a biography level. Number one, we always have to be mindful of the biographer when reading a biography. This is something that I learned the hard way reading about Andrew Jackson. So what you have to do is you have to understand, is this a hit piece on the individual? Is the biography that you're reading aimed to diminish the accomplishments and life of the subject of the biography? Or is this hero worship? Is the biography that you're reading, the biography in which you currently find yourself, meant to make a hero of the subject? Or, as we have Walter Isaacson claiming here, are there more noble goals at hand? Are we looking for something, or are we in a biography that is aiming to clarify the subject, to simply learn about and explicate the subject, to make the subject clear and real? I have faith in Isaacson that that's what we're doing here. Now, the next reason that this is important here is that this is a biography that is not just historical. This is a biography that is yearning to be applied in the way that literature is applied. We are to read here about Leonardo da Vinci and wonder what aspects of Leonardo's life and personality we might hope to accrue for ourselves, that we might hope to wriggle our fingers inside, gain some purchase, and tear away from the individual that was Leonardo da Vinci, in order that we may become more whole ourselves. I like that. I like that a lot, because that makes the idea of a biography less masturbatory, if that makes any sense. There are some hey, who's against masturbation, right? Nobody that I know. But if you can get something out of it, all the better. So here, if we are to learn a little bit about ourselves through learning about Leonardo, and learn how we might better ourselves in the process, far out. On page 5, we get a little bit deeper into this idea, as Walter Isaacson sort of talks about the ways that he went about his studies for writing this biography, the ways that he tried to garner the knowledge that he hoped to use. My favorite gems in his notebooks are his to-do lists, which sparkle with curiosity. One of them, dating from the 1490s in Milan, is that day's list of things he wants to learn. Here we have one of the greatest minds of his era, just jotting down stuff he wants to learn about. Hey, why don't you Wikipedia an article on flight, Do that this week. You got a to-do list. The measurements of Milan and its suburbs is the first entry. This has a practical purpose, as revealed by an item later in the list. Quote, draw Milan, end quote. Others show him relentlessly seeking out people whose brains he could pick. Quote, get the master of arithmetic to show you how to square a triangle. Ask Giannino the Bombardier about how the Tower of Ferrara is walled. Ask Benedetto Protonari, these Italian names, man. Ask Benedetto Protonari by what means they walk on ice in Flanders. Get a master of hydraulics to tell you how to repair a lock, canal, and mill in the Lombard manner. Get the measurement of the sun promised me by Maestro Giovanni Francisci, the Frenchman. He is insatiable. The he is insatiable comes to us from Isaacson. There was an end quote there that I forgot to relay. But this is Leonardo just sitting back and saying, hey, I know a guy. I know that math guy. How do you triangle a square? I want to know that. That son of a bitch is going to explain it to me. Why? Because I am Leonardo, and it's going to be cool for him. There's a quote from Lawrence Krauss when he was talking about Christopher Hitchens. I think it might have been after Hitchens already died. But he was saying there was a moment where he and Hitchens lived in the same city. I believe it's when he was living in D.C. And he used to just go over to see Hitchens. And he would explain some astrophysics to Hitchens. And he said there was a moment one Sunday morning. I think I'm probably getting this story entirely wrong, so don't quote me. But he had shown up at Hitchens' apartment, and Hitchens was reading the newspaper, and they were having some banal conversation. And it struck Lawrence Krauss right in the head. I am Christopher Hitchens' personal astrophysicist. What did I do? What did I do to get this position? And you have to almost assume that some of these people listed in this list had this same revelation at some point with Leonardo. What did I do to be Leonardo's personal bombardier? Then on page 6, we get this. Still talking about the notebooks, Leonardo kept copious notebooks. Oddest of all, there is this entry, quote, go every Saturday to the hot bath where you will see naked men, end quote. We can imagine Leonardo wanting to do that for reasons both anatomical and aesthetic. But did he really need to remind himself to do it? The next item on the list is, quote, inflate the lungs of a pig and observe whether they increase in width and length or only in width. As the New Yorker art critic Adam Gopnik once wrote, quote, Leonardo remains weird, matchlessly weird, and nothing to be done about it, end quote. To just see that in Leonardo's notebooks, going from probably pervy straight down to, hey, you should inflate a pig's lungs to see what happens, bro. Already getting into links of humanity that links of humanity to which I have never thought about Leonardo. And it's wonderful because he is every bit as strange as one might hope. Moving forward on page 8, we get this quote from Isaacson. Many of the early accounts mention Leonardo's looks and personality. He is described as a man of eye-catching beauty and grace. He had flowing golden curls, a muscular build, remarkable physical strength, and an elegance of bearing when he was walking through town in his colorful garb or riding on a horse. Quote, beautiful in person and aspect, Leonardo was well-proportioned and graceful, end quote, according to Anonymino, which was an anonymous biographer. In the early days after Leonardo's departure. In addition, he was a charming conversationalist and a lover of nature, renowned for being sweet and gentle to both people and animals. it is always nice to have a little bit of description about the person that is just handed to us. Here we have a little bit of biography about Leonardo, the individual just handed to us, gift wrapped and told, hey, handsome fella, hell of a conversationalist, looked good in his robes. There is a little tidbit in here that apparently he enjoyed wearing rose-colored robes that came just to his knees, despite the fact that other people enjoyed more earth tones that came all the way to their ankles. So we have an image of Leonardo that's impossible to look away from. Leonardo would have been a celebrity for sure. He would have been one of these individuals that walks down the road and you just have to look at him, right? You don't have a choice. The last thing, oh, I missed here we go. On page 9, so there's 2 more things to talk about here. On page 9, we have a sort of wrap-up of the introduction here, where he says, Leonardo's, ability to combine art, science, technology, and the humanities, and imagination remains an enduring recipe for creativity. So, too, was his ease at being a bit of a misfit, illegitimate, gay, vegetarian, left-handed, easily distracted, and at times heretical. I think one of the... So the thing that really sticks out about that is that he is cited as being at ease, being a misfit. One of the ways that people become more at ease being a misfit, if you really pay attention, is that they're never a weirdo at one thing. There are so many things that contemporaries of Leonardo here would have, for which contemporaries of Leonardo would have attacked him. You didn't admit to being a bastard. You didn't admit to being illegitimate. You didn't admit to being gay. You didn't tell anybody you were a vegetarian because vegetarians weren't a thing. Being left-handed was seen as being evil. Being easily distracted is a very, very bad quality for someone who is being tasked and commissioned to do works of art that take endless hours of extreme concentration. And heretical. Yeah, that'll get you killed. That'll get you killed. So what happens is, instead of being any one of these things, you throw all of it at people, and they've got nowhere to attack you. There's nowhere for these people to really get any grip. So that you force people to give up. If you were all of these weirdo things at once, people have nowhere that they can attack. The final thing that sort of... it's a fact about Leonardo that slaps me in the face every time I read it, is the fact that he had at most 15 paintings. Leonardo, the quintessential painter, the son of a bitch that if you asked 10 people on the street, 8 of them are going to say, yeah, my favorite painter, I don't know, Leonardo. 8 out of 10 people probably going to just throw that out there. That son of a bitch only finished 15 paintings. Tops. Isn't that wild? So those are things, that's something that always stands out to me. So I hope to have you back. I am not sure exactly when the next segment of this series, the next video in this series will drop. It will be on Chapter 1, Childhood, Vinci, 1452 to 1464. That is from page 11 to page 21. So that'll be the next video in this series. Again, if you were here but not on my other channel is where I do fiction. I do novels, I do short stories, I do poetry over there. It is Strip Cover Lit. But I hope to see you back I hope to see you over there, and I hope to see you back here. I have new videos here and on my literature channel every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday.